Welcome to Conversation with a Community Leader, brought to you by the Leadership Kitsap Foundation. I'm your host and Leadership Kitsap alum, David Walters. With me today is Deputy David Wolner from the Kitsap Sheriff's Office.
Howdy.
Thank you for joining me.
You bet.
The Kitsap Human Services report in January of this year said there are approximately 600 homeless people in Kitsap County, with 250 being unsheltered, 250 in emergency housing, and 95 in transitional housing. That's a 4% increase over 2023. However, that is remarkably less than the previous year's increases. So our efforts are working. Deputy Wolner has a unique position with the Sheriff's Office. He is one of the 2 community resource officers where he works closely with nonprofits and government agencies, for example, HEART, to work on improve the lives of our homeless people. We'll find his perspective from the law enforcement side very unique and insightful and very interesting. We have so much to discuss, but before we talk about that, let's kind of talk about you, David.
Okay.
So where are you originally from?
Cedar Woolley.
Cedar Woolley. Okay,
Yep.
so from Western Washington.
Yeah, I'm just a couple miles or a couple hours up north.
Okay.
Yep.
And so what's your educational background?
Just high school and a little bit of college. So I grew up on a farm. So a really simple upbringing. For the first 7 years of my life, I didn't have, power, water, sewer, anything like that. So very, very simple living on 17 acres. And so I kind of grew up appreciating the simple things in life and, grew to be thankful for what I had. From there, I went to high school in Cedar Woolley and then moved down to the King County area to be an EMT back in the late 90s, early 2000s. So I was an EMT for about 18, 19 years in King County. And during that time, I saw kind of the transition and the transformation of homelessness throughout the state, and with the epicenter being kind of the Seattle area.
Where the population is.
Yep,
Okay.
Absolutely.
So what made you swing over to law enforcement?
Well, I didn't have quite enough verbal abuse in my life. I loved being an EMT and it was an amazing job, but I kind of reached the point where I didn't have a whole lot of challenges. I saw a lot of need for the people that I wanted to help. And so we would, get calls to people who are homeless and see their needs. And my job as an ambulance driver was to take them from point A to point B. And so coming over to the Sheriff's Office and given the opportunity to be in the position I am right now allows me to have a greater impact and impact more people.
Was Kitsap County Sheriff's Office, is that your first law enforcement job?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
So how long have you been with the Sheriff's Office?
4 years, just about. My anniversary's coming up.
Oh, okay. And then, so why Kitsap?
Well, I live local, so I live in Gig Harbor, and so one of my longtime friends kind of encouraged that I start applying, and Kitsap, came to me and said, "Hey, we have a lot of good opportunities here," and so and then I did a ride along. I saw the autonomy that they had. And the trust they were given by their leadership to do the jobs that they want, the way they wanted to do them, and that inspired me to apply here.
Oh, okay. And then, so you are a patrol officer, right?
Yep.
All deputies are patrol officers, or at least when they start.
Yep.
So how did you become the community resource officer? Because that's kind of unique, right? Because there's only 2 of you in the Sheriff's Office.
Absolutely. So even when I was on FTO and I had someone riding with me, I'd bring waters with me to work. I'd bring snacks, and I would encounter the people who are homeless, throughout the county, and I'd stop and talk to them because that's what I like to do. I like to talk to people, and I like to meet them. I like to hear their stories. I like to hear their challenges, and so I'd stop and talk to people. And then when I got out on my own, anytime, as busy as we are, the time that I had to on my own to pursue the job the way I wanted to, I would go out and make contacts with people who are homeless, in between our other calls for service.
And you said your leadership was super supportive.
Absolutely, very supportive of that. And I think they saw that while I was doing it, and they saw a great opportunity to create another position for the community resource officer.
Because we used to only have one.
Used to have one. That's Deputy Montague, and 5% of his job previously to before the large increase in the homeless population was, doing outreach, dealing with the homeless, going out with outreach groups. And since the explosion of the homeless population and the increases, that became 80% of his job. And so they definitely had the need to create one more position, and allowed me to do that.
Oh, wow. Okay, so it sounds like you really kind of pursued your passion.
Yeah, absolutely.
And your personal kind of mission statement.
Yeah.
So what is the primary role of the community resource officers?
It's a Swiss Army knife within the department that fills a lot of gaps that the regular patrol officers aren't able to do. And it can be almost anything you want it to be. And so when I started the position and I asked them, okay, what are my duties going to be? What is my role going to be? And they decide, you're going to make it what you want it to be. And that amount of trust was absolutely inspiring. So, but for instance, we'll go to community events, we'll do education. My partner's doing active shooter training today for different departments. We'll do, community events. We're at the fair, we'll go to schools. We will organize emphasis patrols. So on Monday, we did a speeding emphasis around school zones. So we help organize those. And so our job is ridiculously varied. And so they kind of rely on the individual to focus on certain areas, and then while picking up periphery jobs.
Okay. And then how many deputies are there?
There's 100 plus, and that's
so we're over 100 now.
Yeah, and there's our staffing levels are pretty good right now, especially compared to a lot of other agencies that might be suffering. You can look across the water, and they are in need of a lot of people.
Oh.
We're blessed to have really good staffing right now, albeit Washington State is still one of the lowest, law enforcement per capita.
We're still relatively low across the state.
Yeah, across the country. I think we're one of the lowest.
Okay. And then, so let's talk about the homelessness. So what are some of the root causes that you're finding? Because like you said this morning, you were in an encampment.
Yeah.
This morning, came in with mud on your shoes.
Yeah.
What are some of the causes that get people in these situations?
Well, and there's multiple causes. So, and it's really hard to narrow a lot of those down. So we could talk about the cost of living increases that we've seen over the years. In the late 90s, the median home price in Washington was around $110,000. Okay, right now it's about $550,000. So the median home price in Washington has quintupled. If you take the average wage in Washington around that same time period in the late 90s, it was say around $45,000. Right now it's just above 80. So our median wage has doubled, but the cost but the housing price has quintupled. So we just haven't met that same level.
And really the biggest effect, the harshest effect of that is on the poorer people.
Absolutely.
And then, a lot of, what are some of the misconceptions that the community has on like the cause of homelessness? I know drugs and mental health are one of our major issues.
Absolutely.
On top of, just the cost of living. But it seems like the mental health and drugs, which probably overlap each other constantly.
Yeah.
It's hard to sometimes separate the couple from individuals, but what are some of the misconceptions that the community has?
Well, it's to go along with some of the other causes which you alluded to, which is, mental health and drug abuse, which are way up there also. Some of the misconceptions that people will have is that every homeless person is engaged in XYZ criminal activity. If you see a homeless encampment, then that person is dealing with prostitution and trafficking and, in selling drugs and so on and so forth. And that's not necessarily the case. I will say that, being homeless is a struggle, and a lot of people who are struggling will look for ways to kind of escape that struggle for a short while. And so fentanyl, being as easy as it is to get, right now is an escape, is an easy escape for them. So you're seeing fentanyl quite a lot in the homeless encampments. But a misconception is that that person wants to be there, that they're, that they're engaged in all these other criminal activities and are stealing children. And I mean, it's typically not the case.
And then, so you deal a lot with the encampments.
Absolutely. So,
and we don't actually have that many encampments around Kitsap County compared to what we did, say, in the height of COVID or.
Right. So about 2 years ago was probably when we saw some of our biggest increases across the county. And, but I mean, COVID impacted absolutely everything. We had the fairgrounds that was open as a shelter for a while, and that was fantastic. But over the last 2 years, I've tracked approximately 90 encampments throughout the county, large and small. Okay. And so right now in Silverdale, we've got one large one that we're working on right now that is behind the Bevmo near the mall in that little piece of Department of Transportation property. I'm working with them right now to work on a resolution for that. And aside from that, we've got a couple small satellites in the Silverdale area, like maybe 1 or 2 people that, just I haven't found yet. But that's a vast improvement from even a year ago where we had this giant encampment on Hospital Hill. Mm-hmm. We had encampments up and down the Clear Creek Trail going up towards Ridgetop on the north side of 303. We had several down 303. So they were spread all over the place. Right now, we've only got a few.
Okay. And then, so you primarily, you monitor the entire county, but you don't necessarily have, I don't know if jurisdiction is the right word, in the cities.
Right. That's correct.
But you work with all of our city or all our municipalities.
Yeah, we work with them, and there's always going to be cross-pollination, as it were, with people going from point A to point B and coming to Silverdale, going back to Bremerton, going up to, Poulsbo, and then to Port Orchard. But the population we have right now is relatively static to their areas. Bremerton right now has 51% of the homeless population in the county, so they bear the vast majority of the load. Port Orchard has their population. Really, most of the people I interact with are in the Silverdale area that are unincorporated county.
Okay. And then, so kind of the average person that is homeless, that is in the encampment, they're not families, right? They're actual individuals, or?
Mostly individual. There are a few families. And very rarely do we find children.
Because if there's children, you have different laws that you can actually follow, right, to get them into safe.
Well, I will definitely say that the county will bend itself over backwards to make sure that no children are out in encampments. Okay. So, for instance, we had a 4-month-old that was in an encampment on Dickey Road a couple months ago, and after identifying that they were there, the HEART team came out, and within probably 2 hours, they got them into a hotel.
Okay.
So that was absolutely fantastic.
So the gloves are off when minors are involved.
Absolutely. The argument can be made that some people that are out in encampments are making that choice for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to children, they're not making that choice. So we try to get them into, a better situation as quickly as possible. Outstanding.
So how can the community get involved? What kind of support do you need from the average citizen?
Well, that's a good question. And it's going to mean something different to each person, mm-hmm. depending on their viewpoint. So there are a lot of local outreach groups. One of those might be Northwest Hospitality. They take a lot of volunteers in and take a lot of resources in as far as, going out, making contacts, trying to get people, food, water, shelters, things for their vehicles they may have. I take donations when it comes to care packages. So when I go out to encampments, I've got care packages. My wife's clinic made us a bunch of packs where it's got toiletries, socks, cold weather items when it was the winter time, snacks. And that allows me, when I'm out there making contacts, to kind of bring them something to kind of ease the burden of, their needs.
So when it comes to, you kind of have to balance, right? Compassion with law enforcement and public safety.
Yeah.
I mean, that's got to be kind of a tough juggle. I mean, although kind of what I've known from you now, that's who you are and you know how to do that. But that's got to be kind of a tough juggle sometime.
It is. And my driving motto is compassion with accountability.
Okay.
And so it's kind of like raising my children at home. If you only have compassion with your kids and it's your house, they're going to run your house and it's going to turn into chaos. On the flip side, if you've only got accountability and you rule your house with a stick, and then your kids are going to be miserable and you're going to have a miserable household. So I believe there's an important balance of having both. And I see the community as my family members. And so when I'm out there doing enforcement, I want to treat them like my family, treat them with compassion, but at the same time, they have to understand that there are consequences for their actions. There's the accountability side. And I think that creates an important structure for them that they may have been missing.
Okay. So kind of moving on to a little bit of leadership. I want to discuss. So you team with all the nonprofits,
right?
Right. I mean, you're in the trenches with them when they go do because sometimes social workers put themselves almost in harm's way, just because they don't know the situation they're going to have. So
right.
You accompany them.
Absolutely.
And then how does that partnership work, right? Because they're on their own funding. They may be county, they may be state, or they may be a nonprofit.
So with the nonprofits, they don't necessarily reach out to me as much as they do to perhaps other agencies like KCR and Heart and work with them. But I work really closely with Heart, which is a county agency that has someone who works out of Kitsap Community Resources. I've also worked with Kitsap Mental Health and their MCOT team. And then I'll work with whatever agency, Coffee Oasis, for instance, if they need to do outreach in the encampments, they can get a hold of me, especially if they haven't identified who's out there.
Right. And
I will also send referrals to all of those agencies when I go out there and identify, okay, there's someone who is within Coffee Oasis's age bracket, then I can send them that way.
Because you spend a lot of time literally with our homeless population.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're kind of their first referral service.
Yeah, and that's it, because I have zero interest of just kicking the can down the road. And so if I can get them to a service that is going to get them, in a better spot, that's my number one goal. Because if I only went out there and didn't offer them anything and just said, all right, well, you just got to get out of here because you're trespassing, without offering them any services, then I'm just going to see them, an hour, a day, a week, a month later, just down the road. I want to get them out of that situation.
And I think that's kind of how our the increase has kind of slowed down. Right. Besides just the COVID, I mean, we were at like a 34% increase in homeless year after year after COVID, and now we're down to 4%. So obviously that means we're getting people out of that pipeline or out of that. We're getting them through the transitional housing and then stabilized or whatever they need.
Yeah, the Heart team which started 2 years ago, was a huge part of that impact. And so Jared Moran, who had worked for them for a long time, who just recently left for other opportunities, was my day-to-day partner. We would call each other all throughout the day, going out, identifying where people were, what their needs were, and then trying to get them connected with the resources.
So who influenced you? Did you have a mentor professionally or personally, I guess, as you were coming through, right? Because you did 18 years as the EMT, right? I mean, that's a whole career there. Have you had mentors throughout your career, or how? Yeah.
Just the partners I worked with, the people I worked with, and
because peers can be some of the best mentors.
Yeah, and the people that we meet, and understanding their struggles and their stories, and hearing the tracks that their lives have taken. That to me is a daily lesson of, how I want to interact with people and help them. So it's just everybody I work with and deal with out in the community.
Okay. That's outstanding. That's a great answer. I mean, that's what we want. So how do you develop yourself on an ongoing basis? Right. But I mean, besides, now granted, You have a family and a house and your job that is more than full time.
Right.
How do you develop yourself or kind of take care of yourself
Well,
for your own mental health?
Well, my family is a huge part of that. My wife, who's absolutely amazing, our 2 kids, they've taught me so much throughout my life, learning how to, just be a good person, take care of others. And she was, amazing, single mom. And so when I met her and the 2 kids who were 1.5 and 3 at the time, they taught me what it meant to be a part of a family and, just how to help and mentor people.
Okay. And then, so what advice do you give a young person thinking about law enforcement or even EMT, your kind of career?
Just be ready.
Because obviously you love it.
Yeah, absolutely. Just be open-minded and learn from the interactions you have with the community and the people you work with and the people who are in need. And just be a student of yourself and others and be open to, changing your viewpoints and just adapting to the different situations you meet.
I think one of the things I've heard from a lot of leaders is exactly that, is not necessarily that you're wrong, but have the ability to realize there's a better way of thinking about it or a better way of seeing it, and being humble enough to kind of change your opinion on things.
Yeah.
So to get into law enforcement, how would I go get a job? Not me, obviously. I'm probably too old. But how would someone get a job with Kitsap Sheriff's Office?
So public safety testing is where you would start, and they will do testing for, majority of departments within Washington State. And so you would go to their website and say, hey, I'm interested in applying for this department or this department or this department or multiples at one time. Mm-hmm. And they will give you all the testing criteria and all the next steps you need to take to go throughout that process.
And then all law enforcement goes through the Washington State Patrol Academy. Is that true?
Oh, no, it's the criminal CJTC. So
okay.
So the Washington State Patrol has their own academy that they send people to. And so all the other law enforcement agencies would go through CJTC.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
So all law enforcement basically gets the same training in the state of Washington.
Yeah.
Wow, that's kind of puts you all on the same core knowledge level.
Yeah, it's
expectations.
It's an excellent start, and then when you go to your agencies, your learning is going to be different for each agency. There are certain standards we all have to meet, but it's just going to be different. I mean, working in Kitsap is different than working in Spokane County is different than working in Whatcom County, right, and so on and so forth.
And whether you're rural or downtown Seattle would be drastically different what your day-to-day interactions are.
Absolutely.
Sounds like it's a super fulfilling career.
It's amazing. And like I said, I'm blessed to work for a department that it's given me the autonomy and the trust to be able to do this job.
All right. And I know the Sheriff's Office is always looking for great men and women to join their force.
Absolutely.
All right. So I'd like to thank you and the Sheriff's Office for all the amazing things you do as a community resource officer, really for our community, especially for our most vulnerable. Yeah. That seems like a very tough and complicated job. Please visit kitsap.gov/sheriff and leadershipkitsap.org for more information about both of these places and to apply for a job as a sheriff's deputy. Thank you for joining me, and I look forward to another episode of Conversation with a Community Leader.